Hello, I'm Peter Carter. I'm making this video on the 9th of March 2020. I live in the province of British Columbia in Canada. And in our province, the big news item, which has been practically headlining every day, is the issue of coastal GasLink and the Wet'suwet'en. What is coastal GasLink? I'm going to show you that it's one of many new fossil fuel expansion, planet-killing projects worldwide. It is another knife in the back of Mother Earth. And so what is happening is that the chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en are saying no to all pipelines passing over their territory. It is their territory because in British Columbia it is unceded. So I would certainly stand with them and with their position. And so I'm making this video. Coastal GasLink is a key part of a massive fossil fuel natural gas project, which is proposed to be the tanker shipment of vast quantities of liquefied fracked natural gas from Western Canada to China. On this Google image, you can see the northwest coast of British Columbia here, and the gas which is being fracked is from the northeastern part of British Columbia and over into Alberta. And the plan is to liquefy this gas, this natural gas, at a huge expanded port and LNG facility at Kitimat, and then onto LNG tankers to China across the Pacific Ocean there. So there's the project. The project is a massive project of fracking of natural gas in this huge Montney shale deposit, and the pipeline, the Coastal GasLink pipeline, proposed to run from Dawson Creek there, very, very big distance to the port of Kitimat there, and then from Kitimat, LNG, natural gas, shipped across to China. Here's that regional map. This is showing British Columbia fossil fuel expansion. This is all British Columbia here, Pacific Ocean here, Vancouver Island down there, and Vancouver. And here is the province of Alberta. Here's the port of Kitimat on the coast. So this is the enormous Montney and Duvernay shale. This part here is in the northeast of British Columbia, and this part is in Alberta, as you see. From the top to the bottom, this region is about 600 miles. And in the northeast of Alberta here are the oil sands, the tar sands. And from top to bottom there, it's about 200 miles. All fossil fuel extraction and distribution is now a terrible, terrible thing to do with respect to our current emergency disastrous situation with regards to the climate and the oceans. But oil sands is the very worst of the oil to be extracting, producing, and fracking for natural gas is the very worst way to get natural gas. So this whole region is planned for fracking for natural gas. So there's two pipelines showing here. Here's the Coastal GasLink pipeline running from Dawson Creek to the port of Kitimat there. And this pipeline has been here for a long time. This is the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain pipeline running from Edmonton, taking tar sands oil down to Burnaby in Vancouver. So you get the picture. Vast amounts of more fossil fuels, more fracked natural gas, and more oil sands being transported across British Columbia to the BC coast for further transport by LNG ships to China. This is therefore about fracking for natural gas in the northeast of British Columbia. And the fracking regions in BC are Horn River and Montney, the northern aspect of the Montney Formation. So I'll be referring to those two regions, Horn River and Montney. And here again is the deadly greenhouse gas increasing project, the specific one that we're looking at. The Montney Formation in the northeast of British Columbia and extending further into Alberta, which covers an area of 130,000 square kilometers. So it's proposed to carry frack gas from the Montney Formation to the port of Kitimat, around here, on BC's northwest coast for export to Asian markets. Now, the pipeline is owned by TC Energy Corporation, a Calgary-based company. Its former name was TransCanada, of the Keystone XL pipeline fame. This renamed TC Energy Corporation has partnered with, as you've already seen, some of the world's most profitable oil and gas corporations. So the projects, these plans, are to continue to make fossil fuel money, as making fossil fuel money destroys the planet. Fracking the earth for more oil and gas is the greatest unnecessary evil ever. British Columbia is being fracked. And there you see another image of the fracking industry. This is showing fracking in the Horn River Basin region of northeast British Columbia, which is what this issue is all about. And there you see a larger picture of fracking in this region. Here is a Google Earth image that I got from the Horn River fracking region. But this is just one tiny part of the fracking, which goes over an absolutely enormous region that you can clearly find on Google Earth. So coastal GasLink, another knife in the back of Mother Earth. Well, the world, all of us, the world is in a dire climate emergency. And coastal GasLink and these other corporations that I'll come to, their response is to produce more fossil fuels to be burnt for energy, and that will be the end of our world if it is not stopped. The world is in the sixth mass extinction of life on Earth, to be further accelerated by increasing emissions of fossil fuel and increasing atmospheric concentrations of the greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane. Life is disappearing all around us fast, and that includes where I live in the province of British Columbia. So here's an image of oil and gas shipping to Western Canada on to China. So here's Canada, here's China, there's the Arctic Ocean, here's the Pacific Ocean, and here is the northwest coast of British Columbia. This is the Montney shale gas, natural gas deposit, which is being fracked, and this is the Kinder Morgan tar sands oil terminal. So tar sands oil to China and liquefied natural gas to China. This is a massive project. Here's a report by the Financial Post of 2018. LNG Canada, this is the consortium that's been put together. The nation's biggest private sector project yet wins go-ahead. So this is the biggest, most expensive, massive investment in energy or anything else in Canada. Not only, therefore, will it produce more, much more planet-killing fossil fuels. It will also be draining investment away from a renewable energy infrastructure in British Columbia. So it is absolutely terrible. It is so evil because British Columbia has enormous, abundant sources of renewable, that is clean, non-polluting and everlasting energy. So just to repeat, the project is the Coastal GasLink pipeline and the natural gas liquid processing plant at Kitimat. Question then is, why stop the Coastal GasLink natural gas pipeline? It is because it is one part of the planet-killing World Oil and Gas Corporation plan to frack all the oil and gas in the world to be burnt for energy. And this presentation has more than enough evidence to prove that. And that is a certain end of the world plan, really an end of the world plan, which would happen long before all of the oil and gas from fracking has been burnt. So here we are, the largest single private sector investment in Canadian history. And this is what is called LNG Canada. And it's comprised of these big multinational fossil fuel corporations: Royal Dutch Shell of the UK and Holland, Petronas of Malaysia, PetroChina, Mitsubishi Corporation of Japan, and the Korea Gas Corporation. There's another image, a map of the Coastal GasLink pipeline from Dawson Creek to Kitimat, where there's going to be a huge, massive LNG plant. Now, this is an absolutely enormous amount of fossil fuel natural gas. It's this enormous area here. Most of it is Alberta, and here is the northwest part of it in British Columbia, which I'll be looking at mostly. Now, this map is from the United States Geological Survey, the USGS, in 2018. It's their World Oil and Gas Resource Assessment. Now, this map shows the absolutely enormous potential that the oil and gas corporations are seeing for fracking of natural gas and oil, mainly natural gas. There's British Columbia. Here's the northeast part of British Columbia we're going to be looking at with respect to BC and the Wet'suwet'en. And here is the majority of this formation, shale formation in Alberta. This is the Alberta Basin, the potential for fracking of more fossil fuels. This is also from that report, the Montney and Doig formations in the Alberta Basin in Canada. They say that already they can identify marketable 47.6 trillion cubic feet of gas and 2.2 billion barrels of natural gas liquids. I'm now returning to the Wet'suwet'en First Nations in BC and their objection to natural gas pipelines going over their territory. So this is Kitimat that we've already seen, and there's Vancouver down here, and there's Dawson Creek. So there is the Coastal GasLink pipeline. And this region here is the unceded Wet'suwet'en territory. So you can see how the Coastal GasLink pipeline cuts right across their territory. And then there are these magnificent creatures. These are woodland caribou. I used to live up in Prince George, and seeing a herd of caribou on the move is some sight to see. So I gather that these herds of caribou are in big trouble. They're listed as endangered, and I gather that their territories are protected by an agreement between the federal government of Canada and the BC government. And it appears to me that the Coastal GasLink pipeline goes straight through their herd territory protected areas. One of the reasons given for the populations of these caribou to be in trouble is disturbance by oil and gas exploration. Now, the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs complain that there are in fact 4 proposed fracked natural gas pipelines proposed to go across their territory. 2 here to Kitimat and 2 here to the port of Prince Rupert. And this inset here shows the Wet'suwet'en territory, and there's Kitimat showing there, and there's Prince Rupert up there. This is the Trans Mountain oil pipeline going down to Vancouver. This looks far worse for the endangered woodland caribou. This map here, the purple regions are where the caribou herds are. And, I mean, just look. This map here is provided by the Watershed Sentinel, a environmental publication on Vancouver Island. And from Natural Resources Canada, we find that there are in fact 13 LNG plants planned for British Columbia. The quote from Natural Resources is 18 LNG export facilities have been proposed in Canada, and of those 18, 13 are in British Columbia. And you can see the proposed natural gas LNG terminals and the pipelines on this excellent map. This is another map which shows a lot more proposed pipelines. There's the Coastal GasLink pipeline, and a lot more proposed LNG export terminals. And this map is from the Natural Gas Intelligence publication. Now, if you take a look at the vast extent of this region potentially that the corporations want to frack, you could definitely understand that the Coastlink gas pipeline in Kitimat may just be the first of such pipelines and LNG export terminals to take all of this enormous trillions and trillions and trillions amount of natural gas to China to be burned and to destroy the climate and to destroy the oceans in the process. So here's from that same publication, Natural Gas Intelligence, and there you see the Montney Shale area here is 130,000 square kilometers. Huge. There's Kitimat. This Google Earth image shows the port of Kitimat here. Here's Victoria, here's Vancouver down here. So way up in the northwest coast, there's an inlet which reaches to Kitimat. That's Haida Gwaii, the Queen Charlotte Islands. There's Dawson Creek there, the start of the Coastal GasLink pipeline. And there is a closer image from Google Earth of Kitimat. And you'll see where the LNG tankers have to pass through these inlets to reach the Pacific on their way to China. That's an actual image of Kitimat. This is an illustration of the Kitimat LNG terminal from a publication that tells us that LNG Canada, the consortium here, is the largest of 13 LNG export terminals proposed for British Columbia and one of the country's largest infrastructure projects ever. So there's another illustration from the coast. So we're into more maps here. This shows the Montney Play evolution. The oil and gas industries euphemistically call these enormous projects, which are now all planet-killing projects, they call them play. So there's some history, and this is the Montney Formation here. This map here shows oil and gas in the Western Canada Sedimentary Basin. for orientation, here's British Columbia, there's Alberta, there's British Columbia, there's Alberta, there's the Montney shale gas field, and this region here of northeastern British Columbia corresponds to this region here on this map. And this shows oil fields. This shows oil fields in green, oil sands, the tar sands in purple, and the gas fields, natural gas fields in pale red. So you can see the enormous amount of oil and gas here. It's practically all so-called unconventional oil and gas, the very worst kind, tar sands oil and shale gas being fracked. So this makes this region one of the what the corporations and the governments regard as one of the top regions in the world for oil and gas. And the corporations, the fossil fuel corporations, financed by the big bank corporations and supported, actually even encouraged by the governments of Canada, Alberta, and British Columbia. The plan is to frack and mine all of this oil and all of this gas, and that is a planet-killing plan. This I've combined two maps. I put over the map of Western Canada, the Western Canada oil and gas locations. Oil is in green, there's the tar sands, and gas is in red. A vast amount of fossil fuels, all of which should stay in the ground if we want the human race to survive, and if we want life on this planet to survive. This fracking has to stop. It is the most deadly evil ever. Another map, oil and gas resources in Canada. The big one over here, again, is the tar sands. Another map, fracking Canada. This map showing the main producing basins and prospective basins according to the geology. Unbelievably, the oil and gas corporations, aided and abetted by our governments, wants to frack practically everywhere. They plan to frack the world, as I'll show. Fracking North America, yet another map showing the extent. So if the human race and life on this planet Earth are to survive, all fracking must stop, and stop immediately. And the main reason is this. Here you see the atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide here in the green and atmospheric concentrations of methane in blue. This runs from 1860 to the present time, February 2020, an enormous acceleration of both greenhouse gases. And the natural gas industry emits both CO2 when it's burnt for energy, and it emits methane because it's mainly methane. And with fracking and the endless distribution in pipelines inevitably results in methane being leaked out, and the industry calls that fugitive methanes, and that is now very significant. The more the size of the natural gas industry increases, the more methane is going to leak out. So the accelerating levels, the unprecedented rates of increase and concentrations in the atmosphere of these two greenhouse gases already threaten our future survival. I'll have a little bit more on the science to say at the end of the video. This is engineering the final evil, the global annihilation of life. Fracking North America again. Fracking North America, again, each one of these red dots represents a fracking well that's been drilled. Fracking Canada. This is from some years ago. The Montney Formation's marketable unconventional petroleum potential, which means fracking, has been evaluated by the various governments involved and is expected to contain 12,719 billion metric meters of natural gas, 14,521 million barrels of natural gas liquids, and 1,125 million barrels of oil. So the GasLink pipeline project is part of this insanely evil, massive project of natural gas liquids, and oil from the fracking in the northeast of British Columbia and across the border into Alberta. The BC Oil and Gas Commission did a report here recently, 2017. There I've added all of these drilled wells. Each of these red spots is a well that's already been drilled in British Columbia. A similar map. This shows wells drilled since 2005, and this is a government publication. This is another government publication from the BC Oil and Gas Commission, the report of 2017. This shows the huge increase in the number of fracking gas wells that have been drilled in British Columbia. This map is from the same report, and it shows the increase in fracked natural gas production in British Columbia from 2006 to 2017. These are all drills for fracking wells that have already been drilled. This is the global plan. This is the plan which is already well advanced to frack the world, which will destroy the world. Just want to bring your attention to all of these pink red regions where fracking is already proceeding. But of course, the vast majority of the fracking, the dark red, is in the United States and in Canada. Global sites identified from fracking. This is a map and a study back in 2013. And again, look at the size of the potential fracking region mainly for natural gas. This is illustration that goes back some years, greenhouse gas footprints. This one, the biggest one is shale gas. The red here is methane. The orange is CO2 from the shale gas industry and combustion of all that fossil fuel. Next is conventional natural gas. Next is diesel oil. And there is coal. So fracking natural gas is a hellish thing to be doing in Canada. The science, on the other hand, has been saying for years that the emissions of carbon dioxide and methane, greenhouse gases, those greenhouse gases that are emitted by the natural gas industry, have to decline to near zero to limit global heating and ocean acidification. And that's been known for years and years. This is a quote from the latest IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's 2014 Fifth Assessment. Is a headline statement. We have to get to near zero emissions of carbon dioxide and the other greenhouse gases, which include methane. So this is why this project and all other similar projects around the world are planet killing, and they are the ultimate evil in industrial projects and engineering. Bit of science on natural gas. Natural gas is 85% methane. When it's burnt, it's a major source of CO2 emissions because it is a fossil fuel. When it's burnt, it emits about half of the amount of CO2 from burning coal. But what we're going to do is, the plan is to produce more and more and more natural gas. So more and more natural gas will be burned. So there will be more and more CO2 emitted. The natural gas industry is a large source of methane as it leaks, called fugitive emissions, and recent research says that that is a very substantial part of the current acceleration of atmospheric methane. And in fact, some of the methane which is emitted into the atmosphere is converted to carbon dioxide, and that prolongs its heating effect. This shows why the World Oil and Gas Plan is the end of the world plan. This is the trends in total global greenhouse gas emissions from 1970 up to 2019. The vast majority of these greenhouse gas emissions, of course, are carbon dioxide, and next in line is methane. And you see the acceleration over this entire period of time, and a further acceleration just over the past few years. Another authoritative publication on the world oil and gas, their end of the world plan. This is from the Global Carbon Project, their annual global carbon budget. This shows emissions of CO2 from fossil fuels running from 1960 up to 2019. All three are increasing rapidly. The brown one is coal, the black one is oil, and the lower one here, which I've highlighted, is natural gas. And as you see right now, natural gas is accelerating faster than all of the other fossil fuel planet killing gases. A little bit longer and more information on that. Most important, the reason why these are planet killing projects, the accelerating increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide and methane levels from 1850 to 2020. This is carbon dioxide. The normal carbon dioxide pre-industrial is 280 parts per million. Right now, for February 2020, it's reached 413 parts per million. 280 to 413. Methane, the normal is 800 parts per billion. Methane now is 1,000 parts per billion higher. It's 1,885 parts per billion. You see the insane evil of extracting more natural gas, more coal, to burn more of these fossil fuels, producing more heating and ocean acidification, which make them planet-killing projects. To underscore this, this is the 1 million year carbon dioxide limit, 300 parts per million, right down here. Here's the 1 million year atmospheric methane limit, 800 parts per billion, right down here. This is the final image. This is an image of World Energy Sources from the IEA publication in 2018. The bottom three here are the fossil fuels, so I marked them in this block here. Natural gas there, coal there, oil there, they're all increasing except for coal, but coal is not decreasing. So all of these fossil fuel sources are remaining at unprecedented high levels. This is bioenergy, so that's also another source of carbon dioxide. And here, this little slither here, this is clean renewable energy. That's the size of the representation of clean, renewable, everlasting energy compared to the amount of fossil fuels that are currently being produced. And as you see, these insanely evil fossil fuel expansion projects plan to keep this situation going, to keep fossil fuel energy increasing, to keep the burning of fossil fuels for energy increasing, thereby keeping the atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide and methane accelerating as they currently are. What this science, these actual atmospheric measurements tell us is that we are on the fossil fuel heading to end the world. This is an inescapable fact by these unprecedented atmospheric concentrations and accelerating trends. The world, we are all being pushed onto this heading by the fossil fuel corporations, the multinational fossil fuel corporations, the multinational investment banking corporations that are financing these enormous, insane, further fossil fuel extractions and fossil fuel distributions by pipelines and supported, actually pushed by our own governments. In the case of these enormous amounts of oil and natural gas in Canada, we are being pushed onto this suicidal scenario by our own governments, our own leaders of the and ministers of the federal government, of the Alberta government, and of the British Columbia government. They are not only permitting these further expansions of fossil fuel extraction and distribution, they are using our tax money to subsidize these insanely evil massive industrial projects.